So how to create a new IEP in the MELS format for a student. So I've logged in to ISM using my credentials, and I'm going to search for the student who would like to create an IEP for, and I'm going to type their last name. So it starts with the letter L. I'm going to type L %, and this is going to list all the students whose last name begins with L at my school. So I am going to pick Alexander. So I click to access his information. I click this arrow, and here we go. I have Alexander's student record. Now in the previous years, the IEP was found under this tab, Forms. But if you want to use the new MELS IEP, it's under this tab labeled Individualized Education Plan. So you click here. So we can see that Alexander does not have an IEP. So if we'd like to create one for him, you simply click Add. So there we go. We can see that it has been started. And now in order to access the information in his IEP, you click this arrow. All right, so adding a meeting is the first initial step in creating an IEP after actually starting one. You'll see here that you cannot access other parts of the IEP unless you add the meeting. So it's not going to let me click on objectives and means. There's nothing there. I can't add an objective. You can at this point fill in the abilities and needs, but the actual meat in the IEP is in the objectives and means, and you can see that you can't fill that in unless you start a meeting. So it's always the initial step when you're first creating one. So I'm going to go back into the Meetings tab, and I'm going to simply click Add a Meeting. And it's going to be the initial meeting. So you're going to have one initial meeting, several review meetings, and one closing meeting. So if the next time I come in to add a meeting, it's going to be a review meeting, and the time after that it's going to be a review meeting, etc., etc. So here what the meeting serves as is a record of when and who inputted information in the IEP. And you can think of it as a certain time period. So typically we're going to enter IEP information either in the fall if we're updating existing IEPs, and when creating new IEPs perhaps in the spring. So it's really going to serve as a record during that time period who is responsible for the student. So it's typically going to reflect the principal and the teachers that they have at that time. So you're going to record the date. This could be the date of when you're actually meeting with your colleagues and entering information. It could be the date of when you're going to meet with parents to sign the IEP. It really should just reflect the date that's around the time period. You have to choose a time, which right now it's about 10:40, so I'll put 10:30. It is on the 24-hour clock, so if you are having a meeting in the afternoon, just remember to use that. There's going to be no reminder sent because let's say the meeting's happening today. And then we're going to just check off who is attending this meeting. Okay, so let's say that we have the parents and student involved, that we have the principal as the host of the meeting, so somebody must host. And then we've invited, let's say, just the core teachers, the English, French, and math teacher. Now, depending on the student and why the IEP is being created, you could invite more teachers, but typically you're going to have your core teachers who would be writing the IEP. But like I said, it's not going to be the same in all cases. You also have space here to enter other people within the school. So if you have a resource teacher, social worker, other teachers, they are going to be listed here. So this will be a list of all the other employees in your building. And then if the student has a social worker from the outside or an educator, you could actually fill in their information here. So just to note that whoever you check off here, their names are going to appear on the IEP to sign. So if you don't check off the parents and or the student or the principal or a teacher, then their names are not going to appear on the last page to sign the IEP. So that's just a note in terms of working within the system. So then you press save and everything's been saved. You can see that here. And now you can see we can access the other parts of the IEP. So we can start actually writing it. So again, you don't necessarily have to have, I would recommend that you don't create a new meeting every time you come into the IEP to enter information. Typically in a year, you would have about 1 to 3 meetings signifying that time period when the group that works with the student collectively made a decision to either initiate an IEP or to update it. So it's not a good idea for individuals to go in and just create meetings because it kind of messes up how the functions work later on, which I'll talk about more later. So typically in a year, you would have between 1 to 3 meetings that are created. Again, you would have one initial, several review meetings, and then when the student is done with the IEP, whether they don't need it anymore or they're leaving school, then you would close it, but only then. So that's how you add a meeting. Before we move on to entering information into other parts of the IEP, I just wanted to make mention of one of the features that's on here if you're technologically savvy or you want to save yourself writing some emails, is that there is a feature on here that you can send a meeting notice via email through this meetings tab. So whatever information you have entered here, so let's say that you've decided that this is when your meeting is going to be, and all the people who are checked off. At the bottom here, there's a button that says send a meeting notice. So if you click send a meeting notice, the system will send an invite to all of the people who are checked off via email to let them know that they need to be present at this meeting at this time to work on the IEP. So that's an option. You don't have to do that by any means. You don't have to do that, but if you would like to, that's an option that exists. And these little envelopes with the green arrow means that the message was sent. So this person has an email within the system and that has been sent to that email address. So I will also give you a quick view of what that email looks like that is sent. So it's just a letter generated by this system and we can't necessarily change it. It's pretty generic, but I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. So that's an option that you have if you wanted to send a meeting invitation via email. Okay, so you've sent out a meeting notice to anyone who you have selected in the meeting tab, and this is what the email is going to look like that you have sent to people. So it's a really standard format. You cannot change the email that people are going to receive, but it does send out the information regarding the meeting, the date, the time, the location, and where in the school the meeting is going to be. Now, people who receive this email can confirm or decline their attendance by just clicking on this link, and it will either say that you have confirmed this meeting or you have declined this meeting. So this is what the email looks like when you send out a meeting notice.